All right, the Senate voted on 4 separate immigration proposals on Thursday. All of them failed. Senators voted 54 to 45 on a bipartisan immigration bill that the White House had threatened to veto. They also defeated a bill backed by President Trump on a 39 to 60 vote. Senators needed 60 yes votes for the proposals to proceed. And that means as the president's March 5th DACA deadline approaches, there is still no deal to protect dreamers from being deported and still no deal to fund the president's border security plans, including the wall he has so adamantly spoken about. National political reporter for RealClearPolitics, Caitlin Huey-Burns, joins me now. Again, always good to see you. I told you, it's like we see each other every, blue moon?
Exactly. Good to be here. Thanks.
All right, good to see you. What role is the president playing in immigration talks?
Well, as you mentioned, the White House actively threatened to veto this bipartisan proposal that was put forth in the Senate today. As you mentioned, 3 of the pieces of legislation that were to deal with DACA were shot down in various different ways in the Senate today. And, rewind back a few weeks ago when the president said he would sign anything, and that's really just not true. We saw the White House really push back on this bipartisan proposal. It only gained support of about 8 Republicans. And where talks go from here is really unclear. If the Senate, which was considered the way for bipartisan legislation, couldn't figure out a consensus on this issue, it's really hard to see how anyone does at this point.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. What happens now that these bills have failed?
Right. The thought process was that the Senate would be able to come up with something, and the question would be what the House would do. And now that the Senate hasn't been able to put up anything, there's a question about whether Congress will, in fact, take any legislation up. There has been that court injunction on the DACA deadline, which means that deadline is a little more flexible, lawmakers say, so there's not that immediate pressure that was facing them with that March deadline. But what I've been seeing and hearing from people I talk to is that, both sides are really entrenched on this issue, and we're in a midterm election year. Primary season is kicking off in March, which will make this really even more difficult for lawmakers to take a stand either way.
Yeah, and speaking of politics, today was supposed to be a big news day in the world of politics. Former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney was expected to announce his run for Senate in Utah on Thursday, but he postponed it, of course, because of the tragic shooting there in Florida. When do you think he will make that announcement now?
Well, he's supposed to announce tomorrow in a speech, and it's no surprise that he's getting in. He's been kind of flirting with this announcement and kind of teasing it for a while now. What's really interesting is to see kind of how he will run. Remember, Romney has been a top critic of the president, has been unafraid to go against him on a lot of key things, and a lot of people are thinking that he might be kind of the leader of the anti-Trump movement within the Republican Party, but it's not clear. He also might take some stances that endear himself to the president. Republicans I've been talking to say that Romney, if he chooses to run as an anti-Trump candidate, that's not the model that they want for other Republicans. And you'll notice in other Republican primaries, it really is a race to get closer to Trump. And so it's a really interesting dynamic going on the Senate side, where the map looks very favorable to Republicans. They're competing in states that Trump won overwhelmingly. And in a place like Utah, of course, it's an overwhelmingly red state. Romney really doesn't face much competition.
At the same time, you've been reporting that a top Democratic group is warning party leaders about messaging now that we are 9 months away again from midterms.
Right.
What is that group saying?
Right. It's really interesting polling coming out from Priorities USA, which is a super PAC, a really active super PAC on the Democratic side. And they've been saying that, look, we need candidates to stick to the message of the economy, that there's been a lot of distractions, a lot of focus on the president and scandals coming from the White House, lots of focus on immigration. But what voters are really responding to are economic messages. And this polling showed that Democrats have actually lost ground to Trump and Republicans on the tax bill, which shows that Republicans are gaining some steam on this bill. They're trying to increase its popularity. They're spending a lot of money to help do that. And in a lot of these polls, it seems to be working. And so Democrats have to figure out not only this anti-Trump message, and there's a concern that won't carry them across, but also forming an economic message that people can rally behind.
All right, I want to switch gears a bit. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon was questioned on Capitol Hill Thursday by the House Intelligence Committee. Do we know what came out of that? that.
Right, a long meeting there, and there's also reports that he has met with Special Counsel Robert Mueller. What's interesting about Bannon is going back to that Fire and Fury book, which he participated in, had a lot of scathing things to say about the administration. Of course, Donald Trump Jr. and Jared Kushner, kind of fingering them out as being in this Russia probe. And so what he told the committee, we have yet to really hear, but the fact that he is talking to special counsel, according to reports, is very interesting.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns, always good to see you. Thank you so much.